Hey everybody, this is Kathy from K.dill Handmade, and I wanted to welcome you to my video tutorial today for the Nomad Traveler. I'm so excited for this new pattern. It is, I think, a fun pattern. It's very functional, it's very useful, and I think it's going to be your go-to for when you want to go on a trip. So this is first, let me just tell you that the Nomad Traveler comes in 2 sizes, and there are 3 ways to carry it. So I will go through all of that. I'll show you all the features and the 2 different sizes so you can see. Okay, so first you have the overnighter, which is good for 1 or 2 nights. That is this size here. And then you have the weekender, which is good for several more nights. You can see this is a much larger. Again, this is in the duffel style configuration as well. So let me show you, since this one's smaller, it's a little bit easier to show all the features. So on the front of this, you have these 2 cargo pockets, and I designed these because when I'm traveling, either by plane or by car, wherever I'm going, I often have a bottle of something to drink. And when we get to our location, or when I'm at the airport and it's time to get on the plane, I have my bag. If it's a plane, I have my suitcase, and then I have my little bag for like under the seat, and then I have a drink, and it's like too much to juggle. So I designed these to hold water bottles. They will easily hold a 20-ounce bottle that will stick up probably about this high. You could also put a can, like a 12-ounce can in there. That would go all the way, it would be all the way inside the pocket. I've also found it's a great spot to just drop your phone. It's a great pocket for that as well. And then on the back, you have the travel sleeve, so you can put it on your suitcase, and that it's nice and secure, and you can bring it with you wherever you go. So inside, a couple of the features inside, I tried to keep it simple, because for like duffel bags and travel bags like this, like I don't need a ton of pockets. I just need places to put all my stuff. Like I just want it to be able to hold everything. So on one side here, you have a very large, a very wide zipper pocket. And then on the other side, you have slip pockets. So this one is configured, so I'm trying to peek over the top of the bag. This one is configured into 2 compartments. You can configure them whichever way you want. First way is, like I said, as a duffel with the sides down like this. These are connected with O-rings and D-rings on the side. So the second way you could carry it is if you removed the O-ring from the side D-ring tab and just pulled these edges up, and then you have a traditional tote style, which I think also looks really cute. Now this pattern has D-rings here and here. So they are on these strap handles. There is an optional crossbody strap that you can make. If you connect it to those D-rings, then you could have this as a crossbody like this. It would be a narrow crossbody, but it does work as a crossbody. So you could do that with the tote or with it in the duffel style. And then the third way is if you wanted to remove these, the strap from the D-rings, and then on the side here, where the O-ring is, you can clip it on the O-ring. You could slip the little zipper through the O-ring so it's not in the way. Same on the other side. Slip the tab through the O-ring, connect your crossbody, and then, let's see if I can get the shape just right. This bag doesn't have anything in it, so it's a little bit difficult. But then you can see, then you have the bag kind of dips up at the sides. So you have lots of options with this one. Like I said, this is the overnighter size. So this is the smaller one. Okay, so here's the overnighter. And sorry, this is the overnighter. This is the weekender. So I think you can see pretty well the size difference in these 2 totes. That is the Nomad Traveler. Again, it comes in 2 sizes, 3 different ways to carry. I'm sure there are other ways that you can figure it out as well. So probably more than 3 ways, but I hope you enjoy the pattern. I hope you enjoy making it, and I hope you make lots of nomads. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's start with going over all of the pieces that we're going to need, and I'm going to pull over this big pile here. And it just barely fits in the camera, but I just wanted to show you the materials that I'm going to be using for the exterior. I have this vinyl here, and then I have waterproof canvas. So waterproof canvas and the vinyl exterior. I have already gone ahead and interfaced the vinyl strips that go along the bottom. That's the accent piece, and then this is the base. I've put SF 101, and then I've also added a piece of Peltex firm stabilizer because I want the base to be pretty firm. The rest of the bag I want it to be a little bit more malleable so that I can collapse it down into another suitcase if I need to. So that's for the exterior. For the lining, I am using ripstop nylon, and that is for the base. You'll also see that I'm mixing and matching these pieces so it kind of goes together, exterior and interior. I'm also using the ripstop nylon for the exterior bottle pocket or cargo pocket, whatever you want to call it. Also for the travel sleeve. On the inside, I have, again, this waterproof canvas. This is going to be for my large zipper pocket. And then this is a slip pocket. I'll be using this vinyl from the exterior. This will be an accent to the top of the slip pocket, and then this will be obviously the zipper overlay. Then as far as other pieces, we also need 2 lengths of zipper, one for the exterior, one for the interior zipper pocket. We have some little tab pieces here. This is for the zipper ends on the outside, and then these are going to be for the O-ring tabs also on the side of the bag. Obviously you need your lengths of strap. I have 2 pieces here for a handle. If you are adding the crossbody strap, you will also need a length for the crossbody. You have 2 D-ring tabs here that are going to go on the sides of the bag. I'm using these triangle D-rings for my pieces instead of the traditional shaped D-ring. So I have 4 of those. I will say that if you are not adding the crossbody strap, you could get away with just 2 of them. At this point, I'm still uncertain if I'm adding the crossbody strap to this bag or not. So I'm going to go ahead and add them anyway. And also I will show you obviously when we install them because it's an easy step to forget, and you don't want to forget putting these on if you're using the optional crossbody. So we have 4 of those, and then you will have 2 O-rings, and these are the carabiner style O-rings. So they should have a little piece right here that folds in, and zipper pulls. You'll need 1 for the inside zipper pocket and 2 for the main exterior. All right, so I think that's all of the pieces that we're going to need for this bag. So let's go ahead and get started with the straps first, and we'll get those out of the way. All right, so we have our 2 strap handles. What you want to do for each strap handle is you want to find the center, and I'm just going to give it a little fold here. And then from the center of each strap, so right where your center is, you're going to measure out 4 inches and make a mark. I'm using a heat erasable pen here, so that's why I'm not too worried about the mark being seen. You could always mark it on the wrong side of your webbing if you're worried about that. Okay, but here are my 2 marks. So again, center mark 4 inches out, we're marking on either side. And then we're just going to fold the strap, matching up those marks. We're going to fold the strap in half. And this is going to create the handle on our strap. And we're going to clip across until we get to that other marked point, just like that. And then we are going to sew at 1/8 of an inch from this edge over here. So this is the folded edge where the clipped side. We're going to sew at 1/8 of an inch back stitching at the beginning and at the end to secure those in place, and repeating the same step to create the other strap. All right, once you get your strap handles sewn, this is what they are going to look like. So you should have 2 that look exactly the same with your little handles here at the top and flat the rest of the way down. Now what we need to do is we need to attach these to our center exterior panels. So grabbing your 2 center panels, now I'm using the same print all the way across. You could use an accent piece here for the center, so whichever pieces you have for the center, that's what you want to grab. Also, here is where you want to grab your 2 D-rings. All right, so I'm going to set one to the side and one of the D-rings, grabbing your other piece, your center and your D-ring. I'm also going to grab some double-sided tape here, and here I'm using 1/2 inch double-sided tape. On the back of my strap, I'm going to add some double-sided tape just down here at the bottom. I don't want to go all the way up. I just want it to hold long enough for me to put it in place. Okay, so taking your strap, and we're going to start on the left side. So I'm going to remove the paper backing. Now there are measurements in the pattern for how far up and how far in from the side you're going to place this strap. I have already marked those measurements lightly on this fabric, so you're probably not going to see where I'm doing that, but the measurement is provided for in the pattern. Okay, before we attach this side, this is where you attach the D-ring. So just slide the D-ring up. It can stay up there towards the top. We don't need it right now. We just need it to be on the strap. Okay, and then removing the paper backing from that side. Again, I'm aligning it with those marks here. And now we need to sew this on. So there is a measurement provided in the pattern for how far up you're going to measure, and you're going to mark a little line or just a little tick mark so you know where to cross the strap. But we are going to sew the strap on, across, down, just creating the box all the way around both sides. And again, we're just leaving this D-ring up here all by itself. Okay, so let's go ahead and sew both sides on. We can do the same thing to the other one, attaching this one in the same way, and then again, don't forget to slide your D-ring on before you sew that one on as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and do all of that and then meet me back here. All right, so once you have both of those sewn on, you will have those, again, those boxes right around the bottom of each strap. We can put one of these to the side for now, and we are going to work on completing one of our side exterior panels. So for this one, it doesn't matter which one, unless you've chosen specific material for the center that you want to be the cargo pocket / bottle pocket side versus the travel sleeve side. But we are going to go ahead and start with the travel sleeve. So grabbing your travel sleeve pattern piece, sorry, not your travel sleeve, your bottle pockets. Grabbing your bottle pocket piece, you're going to take it and fold it in half so that it is still, there is a measurement provided in the pattern for how tall the pocket should still be. And what we want to do is we want to find the center. So I'm just going to fold it in half here. And then finding the center of our panel here, just so I can match up those center marks. And aligning it with the bottom edge, I'm going to clip here at the corners where it meets at the top. And then I'm also going to clip down here along the bottom to hold this all in place. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to sew down this center line. So what I will do is I will start here at the bottom. I will sew up and stopping about maybe a half of an inch from this top stitch line. I'm going to angle out, sew across, and then angle back in. So you're creating, if this was your center line here, you're going to stop right at about there, sew out to this corner, sew across, and then come back, creating a little triangle here. If it helps, you can measure down about a half of an inch and then mark these lines coming out at this angle, just to help you sew that line. But creating this, and again, you could also just go up to the top, stop, and come back down. But I think creating this triangle here at the top not only gives it kind of a nice design feature, it also strengthens this center seam because there's going to be a lot of tension here because of what you're putting in and out of these pockets. So I like to add that triangle. Okay, so starting again at the bottom, we're going to stitch up, over, across, come back to that center line, and then just stitch straight down the center again. All right, so this is how it looks straight up, made that little triangle, and then coming straight back down. All right, so now we can remove these clips. And to create the cargo pocket, which I call the bottle pocket, because when I designed this bag, I wanted something, when I travel by plane, oftentimes I have a bottle, or even in the car, I'll have a bottle of something with me to drink, because I always have to have something to drink with me. And then when I get to where I'm going and I'm trying to like grab all my stuff and get it all organized, and then I have the bottle and it's like, it's so much. So I wanted somewhere to put the bottle where I could just like put it in the bag and then it's easy peasy and I don't have to worry about it. So I'm calling these the bottle pocket. So what you want to do, there's a measurement for how far you're going to measure over from the center. You're going to take your pocket, fold it back on itself, and I'll just give this a nice good finger press. You could take it to the iron if you wanted to, if you preferred, but I typically find that just a finger press is good enough. Okay, now we're going to fold it back again, so back out to the side, but we want to bring that fold right up to where our stitch line is. Okay, so it looks like this. We're bringing this and it meets right up here with our stitch line. I will add a clip here just because it helps to hold it. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So again, measuring that way, we're folding it back on top of itself. And then we're going to fold it back out to the side, matching up that center seam. And again, giving it a nice press and adding a clip here at the top and at the bottom. Oops, I didn't grab the other. There we go. Okay, there, now we got it. Okay, now we're going to leave that clipped for now. And we're going to come over to the sides. And we're going to line up the side seams and clip that in place. So that's going to create a bow in your panel because we still have to create another pocket, another fold on this side. But first we need to baste stitch this pocket in place. So we're just measuring, matching up the side seams, and then we're going to take it over to the machine And we're going to baste stitch down each sides at about 1/8 of an inch. All right, now that that is base stitched on, there is another measurement you're going to measure in from the side panel, and then you're just going to bring this pocket over on top of itself, and it should be the same size fold as what you created on this side. So again, I'm just going to clip it here at the top and at the bottom. Now the important thing here is you want to make sure, so while you're measuring, it's a different measurement in from the side, because you want to make sure that your pocket does not go all the way over to the side, because we are going to be attaching the side panel, and you don't want this pocket to be caught in that seam when you're attaching the side panel. So make sure, there's a measurement, make sure your pocket is away from the side seam so that it doesn't get caught. All right, now same on the other side. We're going to be measuring in, and then if for whatever reason your pockets aren't even, or maybe your folds, just because of the way you cut, or your seam allowance, whatever, if it's not exactly the same, nothing is sewn down here. So you are free to adjust your pleats as needed. You just want something that looks even, nice and centered, and then again away from that side seam. Okay, once you get that done, we are going to stitch, just base stitch straight across here. That's going to hold these pleats in place, and then we can remove all of the clips. All right, here we go. You can get a peek at what your pockets are going to look like here. Your two little cargo pockets, your bottle sleeves, whatever you want to call them. Note, we still have this D-ring kind of floating loose right up here. We're just going to leave it to the top. We will secure it in place after we attach the side panels. So it is fine. We didn't forget about it. It's good. All right, so now what you want to do is you want to grab your two side panels. Okay, and then what we're going to do is fold this over, and you can move your strap out of the way, but we're going to line up the side seams. Let me just make sure. Yes, I want to make sure my panel is going in the right direction. Since it is a little bit directional, I just wanted to make sure my dragonflies were not flying upside down. All right, so once you get this clipped in place, we are going to sew down the side according to the seam allowance. Press this back and away. Again, your pocket should be not in the seam. Once we get this pressed away, then we're going to top stitch down this side. And then we're going to repeat the same thing for the other side. Doing the same exact steps, we're going to clip it in place and then sew down according to the seam allowance. Fold that back and out of the way and top stitch down this side as well. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the machine. Let's go ahead and do that, and then meet me back here and we will finish this outer panel. All right, once we get those side panels sewn on, again, folded back and then top stitch straight down. As you can see, our pockets are not in our side seams, so they're able to move freely, and that's exactly what we want. All right, so now what we want to do is grab our D-ring and slide it down. You can slide it down. I made my stitch line a little bit higher than the pocket. Your stitch line might be level with the pocket, but you just want to bring it down to that as low as you can. And then we're going to stitch just a couple back and forth right here at the top, and that's just going to secure that D-ring in place right there. So that is all we have to do there. Just don't forget to secure this down in place. And then we are going to attach our bottom panel. So I'm going to, before we attach it, I'm going to find the center mark. And I'm just going to make a tiny little triangle snip just to show where that center is. I'm going to do that on both sides. Now you could also find the center on your panel by doing the same thing, folding it in half. However, if we measured correctly where our pockets meet here in the center, that should be the center mark. So we're going to take our bottom piece and clip it in place here along the bottom of the bag. So our bottom band and our main exterior panel is right sides together. And we're just going to clip it in place all the way across. All right, once you get that clipped in place all the way across, you probably notice I have a little extra here from this side panel. I could have trimmed that off, but it's going to be in the seam allowance, so I'm not worried about it. But again, we have everything attached. So once that is done, we're going to sew across the bottom here according to the seam allowance, and then flip this panel down and top stitch along the folded edge onto the lining panel. So you want the seam allowance down towards the bottom band, and then we're going to top stitch along this piece. All right, so once you get that sewn on, everything looks great. The D-ring tab is secured, and then optionally, if you wanted to add some sort of logo badge, you could add this here. There's a measurement in the pattern for how far over and up you will put this. I just like having it here, as I find putting it up here could be a little tricky if you're using it as a duffel. That ends up folding, and if you have it down, it could be on the fold. So it just kind of, for me, it doesn't work up here, but if you want to put it up here, go for it. Like I said, I like to put it down here in this corner. Okay, so now that we have all of that done, this side is done. Let's go ahead and move on to the other side. All right, to create the travel sleeve for the other side of our panel, you're going to create our travel sleeve pocket right now. So we want to take the travel sleeve piece, fold it up so it is right sides together. We're going to clip along this top edge here, and then we're going to sew straight across according to the seam allowance. Then once we get that sewn, we're going to turn the whole thing through so it is right sides out. Straighten out those seams again, and then we're going to top stitch along the top and bottom edges, the folded edges only. So don't worry about the sides, just top stitch on the top and the bottom once you get that turned through. All right, once you get that sewn, we're going to grab our other center panel that we completed earlier. So again, our pocket is right side out. We've top stitched along the top and bottom seams, or folds I should say, and now what we want to do is we want to lay it centered, which it should match up exactly side to side, and then there is a measurement for how far up from this bottom edge you want to attach the panel. So I'm going to just clip these in place. I've already measured that bottom measurement off camera, so I am good there. And again, just clipping it across here. To pull this a little bit so it lines up exactly. There we go. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to baste stitch down these sides here, holding that in place, again making sure our measurement is correct here along the bottom, and then grabbing our other two exterior side panels. We are going to attach them, fold them back and top stitch just like we did on the other side. We're going to do that to both of those side panels, and then again grabbing your bottom band here. Once these are attached, you will attach this the same way with it pointed or right sides together, top stitching or stitching here, and then folding it back and then top stitching along this edge. And then the last thing is that you will again secure your remaining D-ring on this side just like you did on the other side. Okay, so we will go ahead and do all of that to put this piece together, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, so once you get your travel sleeve attached, your D-ring secured in place, everything is in and top stitched. Just trim up anything. If you have any seams that are a little bit off, you can trim those up so everything is nice and even. Now this panel is done and we can set it to the side with the other, and let's grab our base. So here is our base. What you want to do is turn it over to the back side. And you could do this on the front side if you had chalk or some sort of disappearing pen that won't damage your material. But what you want to do is you just want to draw a line. I'm just going to use a regular pen here. So draw a line that is 1 inch in all the way around. So you're just measuring in 1 inch from each side. Okay, and then what we want to do is we are going to top stitch right along this line. So all the way around, just one box. Top stitch, again, like I said, you could mark it on this side of the panel if you prefer to stitch from this side, but that's it. So just stitch all the way around this box. Again, it is 1 inch in from all sides, and I'll meet you back here. All right, once we get that stitched all the way around, now what we want to do is we want to find the centers of the short sides and the long sides. So I'm just going to fold this in half. Again, you can mark it with a pen or make just a small little snip in the corner, a little corner snip. All right, and optionally, let's see, I'm going to use my ruler to find the center this way. Let's see. I was going to say, optionally, you could add purse feet as well, bag feet to your base here if you wanted to have bag feet showing here. There are measurements, suggested measurements for where to place those in the pattern. On this one, I am not going to be adding bag feet, so hopefully you're not watching just for the bag feet. All right, but what we do now, once we have those centers marked, is we need to attach the base to the side panels. So I'm going to grab one of our panels, and then finding the center of the base here, I'm going to lay it down right side up, and then take our base, flipping it over, laying that down right side down, so all of our panels are right sides together. And you will notice that this is shorter, the base is shorter than the main panel, and that is correct. Okay, so we're going to clip it all the way across. Okay, and then taking a ruler, we're going to measure in 1/2 inch and make a mark. And from this side, 1/2 inch, make a mark. And then that is going to be our start and stop lines. So we're not sewing all the way to the edge of the panel. We want to have a little bit of a gap here. So we're going to start here, sew all the way across according to the seam allowance, stop here, remembering to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. And then we are going to attach our remaining lining panel the same way to the side, again measuring in that 1/2 inch. So I'll just go ahead and mark that now. And then we'll sew that side on as well, and that will give us one gigantic panel. All right, once you have all of those attached, you will have something that looks like this. Like I said, a gigantic panel. This is all of your exterior. And the last thing we need to do, which you could always do before before you put this all together, which probably would be a little easier, is we need to attach our side D-ring tabs. So let's go ahead and grab our 2 remaining D-ring tabs, D-rings and D-ring tabs. All right, so we're going to slide 1 tab inside of the D-ring, and then again there's a measurement. It's 2 inches up from the side, from where your base piece is, 2 inches up, and I'm going to have it overhang probably by about 1/2 inch. I'm going to clip it in place just like that, and then baste stitch that on to that section right there. And then coming over to the other side, same thing. Again, you want your D-ring facing in towards the center of the bag, 2 inches up and overhanging by about 1/2 inch, and clipping that in place. Okay, and then like I said, we're just going to go ahead and baste stitch both of these in place. Once you get that done, our whole exterior is done for now. We can put these to the side and let's work on our linings. Okay, so starting on our 1 lining panel, you will have your main lining, your slip pocket piece, and your slip pocket accent. Now your slip pocket accent piece should be as wide as your panel, and this will help you to know which way to fold your panel, your slip pocket panel. So we're going to fold it right sides together, and again, you will know that you have it folded the right way because it will be the same width. If you folded it the other way, your accent band is too long. So just one little tip to make sure you're folding it the correct way. So again, we are folding it right sides together. We are clipping only along the short side. Because we are only going to be sewing along the short side. Okay, so once you get that clipped, we are going to sew down each side at 1/4 inch seam allowance. We are leaving this top open because we are going to turn it through. So once you get this top stitch, go ahead and turn it through and meet me back here. All right, once you get that stitched and turned through, this is what it will look like. It will be open to the inside here. Now you want to take your accent strip and lay it right side down. And I like to use some double-sided tape here. You don't have to, but I just think it helps to hold it in place until I can get it all sewn down. So I'm going to add some double-sided tape, and then removing the paper backing, we're going to take our slip pocket and bring it up about halfway up. Okay, and as long as it's close, you should be good. All right, now we're just going to fold that raw edge over the top of your slip pocket. So we're enclosing the open edge of your slip pocket by adding this little accent strip here at the top. So I'm just going to clip it in place. The double-sided tape does hold pretty well, but I just want to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. So okay, once you get that clipped all the way across, we are going to sew at 1/8 inch from this raw edge here. So we're going to sew 1/8 inch all the way across. Optionally, you could add a second row of stitching above that. That is 1/8 inch from this top folded edge. That's totally up to you. That's, like I said, just a design option if you would like that. You will notice that these tabs hang over a little bit, and that is what we want. That is just fine. Once we get it stitched, we will trim these off so it's level with the sides of the bag. All right, once that is top stitched, now like I said, we can trim off any overhanging tab you might have. All right, there we go. Now we need to attach it to this panel. So what I would like to do is find the center of this panel and find the center of our lining, which I think is pretty much already marked. Okay, And then we're going to align it here. There is a measurement in the pattern for how far up from the bottom that you want to put your pocket. So I'm going to use some double-sided tape here just to help me keep that in place. All right, and then I am using, like I said, I'm using some double-sided tape here along the bottom to help keep this in place until I can get it to the sewing machine and sew it down. You could also use pins, straight pins, if you have pins that you would like to use instead. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stitch all the way around the perimeter of this panel. So leaving the top open, we're going to stitch down the sides and across the bottom. Now here's where you can decide how you would like your pocket configured. If you would like one big slip pocket, then you're done. If you would like to split it in half so that you have two smaller pockets, you can do that as well. You could also add maybe some more narrow pockets if you wanted to add some spots for pens or pencils. I'm just going to do the line down the center, so I will stitch this on, do this line down the center, and then be back for the next step. All right, once you have your pocket sewn in place, now we want to grab our base. So grabbing your lining base, and again it is shorter just like it was on the exterior, we're going to fold it in half and find the center. I'm going to mark the centers on both sides. And then I'm going to find the center bottom of the lining panel. And I'm going to mark the top as well because we are going to need that when we attach the zipper. Okay. So taking our base, we're going to lay it down so it is right sides together along this bottom edge, and we're going to clip it in place. We are going to sew across the base just like we did on the exterior. Don't forget to mark a 1/2 inch in so that you have that starting and stopping point from those sides. So again, just marking in a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch on this side. And then we're going to sew across according to the seam allowance. All right, once you get your base panel sewn on, this is what it looks like. We're not doing any sort of top stitching or anything like that, so we can set this panel to the side for now. Let's go ahead and grab our remaining lining panel. And this is the one that we are going to attach the zipper to, the zipper pocket. So we will need our zipper overlay, our shorter zipper, our zipper pocket panels, and one zipper pull. Okay, so let's go ahead and attach the zipper pull. And let me see, where's my little zipper jig here? All right, so we don't forget to do this later. Let's just go ahead and attach the zipper pull now. Okay. And then what we want to do here is we are going to sew this to one of the zipper pocket panels. So zipper pocket panel is right side up and zipper is teeth side up, right side up, teeth side up. And we're just going to align it here along this top edge. Okay, and then we're going to baste across at 1/8 inch. We are going to, actually, let's baste across at 1/8 inch, and then we're going to take it and flip it so we have the other side of our zipper, and we are going to attach the other pocket panel in the same way. So again, clipping it across here and then sewing that down at 1/8 inch. Okay, so let's go ahead and attach both panels to the zipper and then I'll be back. All right, once you get both sides stitched on, this is what it looks like. You will have the back side of your zipper with the front side of your pockets. Now, one option you have is you can fold this seam down and then top stitch or just stitch right along the zipper, pretty much just barely to the outside of your original stitch line. So what that will do is that will hold your zipper flat. It just kind of gives it a nice finish, and it makes installing it, once we get this zipper overlay installed onto our lining panel, it makes installing the pocket a whole lot easier. So I'm going to take mine back to the sewing machine. I'm going to press these down like this, stitch these down, and then I'll be back. Okay, so that's how that looks stitched down. You can see it's a whole lot easier, that it's nice and flat, and we don't have to worry about trying to hold it flat to get it to lay nicely underneath the zipper overlay here. All right, so let's set the pocket to the side for now. There is a measurement provided in the pattern for how far down you will place your zipper overlay. It is different depending on if you're making the weekender or the overnighter. This is the weekender, so I've measured it down that far. I've used double-sided tape to attach this to the lining panel. Now what we want to do is just top stitch all the way around the exterior edge of the zipper overlay, only around the exterior edge for now. Optionally, if you have a woven label, putting it right here underneath your zipper overlay is a neat spot to put a woven label if you have one and you would like to do that. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and take this. I will top stitch it and then be back for the next step. All right, once we get that top stitched around the perimeter, what we need to do now is cut away the center of this panel. So I'm just using my rotary cutter just to make a slit to make it easier to get to this part that we want to cut away. So we want to cut it away so that we're removing the material but not the zipper overlay. So just cutting it back far enough so that you don't see it on the right side once we turn it around. And then go slow and be careful because you do not want to cut your zipper overlay. If you did accidentally cut your zipper overlay, you're probably going to have to remove it and start over. So sometimes you can save it if it's not too bad, but that's why I said just go slow. Make little snips so that you don't accidentally, like I said, grab that zipper overlay and cut that instead. All right, so we're going to snip this all the way around. And then once we get it removed, you'll see what I'm saying about, there we go, how you can see the zipper overlay from the back, and then when you flip it back over, you do not see any of the material from the front. Okay, so that's exactly what we want. Now, grabbing our pocket, think about which way you want your zipper to open, if you want it to open and close to the left or to the right. So just make sure your zipper is oriented whichever way you want it. And now what we need to do is we need to put this centered underneath that zipper overlay. So I'm just adding a piece of double-sided tape here on either side. And then removing the paper backing, we're going to center it under that opening. Okay, and how I normally do that is I will eyeball it left and right this way just to make sure that I have it completely covered left to right. And then you'll just have to work it to get it centered in the window. So sometimes you might have to lift it up and move the zipper around just to make sure that it is indeed centered in your window. And then once you get it centered and looking the way you want it, like I think that looks pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take it back to the sewing machine, and this time we're going to stitch around the inside box all the way around, securing the zipper to the lining panel. All right, once that is stitched, everything is looking good. That is our zipper attached to our pocket. Now we're going to flip it over to the back side, and we're going to take this top panel and fold it down. So we're just going to fold it right along that seam and clipping it in place. As you will see, the bottom is longer one panel than it is on the other, and that is normal. That is because of the way that we installed this pocket. So the one piece will always be a little longer, and we will just trim that off once we get it clipped in place here in just a second. So you can just trim that bottom panel so that it is even with the top panel. All right, once you have that done, what we need to do now is we need to sew up the sides of this pocket. We're going to leave the bottom unsewn for now. This is where, believe it or not, this is where we're going to be part of our, I call it the double flip. We're going to be turning our bag through the opening in the lining, but then we're going to close it all up through this pocket. So we need to make sure that this stays open. So flipping it back over, we're going to take it to the machine, pull the lining panel out of the way, top stitch or just stitch straight down this side according to the seam allowance. Make sure to back stitch here at the bottom, and then same on the other side. We're going to pull the lining panel out of the way, stitch all the way down, back stitching here. And then the last step we need to do is just open our zipper halfway. So I'm going to open my zipper halfway right now. I'll take it over to the machine and stitch these sides down, and then I'll be back. We are ready to attach it to the other side of the lining base, and then we're pretty much ready to start putting this all together. All right, now that that is sewn, like I said, the sides are sewn up, the bottom is left open, and then the zipper is pulled to the center. Okay, now we want to grab our panel that we completed earlier, and we need to attach, I'm going to flip this around, we need to attach that side of the base to the bottom of this pocket panel that we just made. So I'm going to mark the center of the base. Again, making a tiny snip. And then I'm going to match up those center marks. And this side we're going to sew on a little bit differently. So we're not sewing all the way across. We need to leave a turning gap here on this side. So let me just get this sewn. I'll flip it over and then I'll show you where we're going to sew this base on. Okay, so just like we did on the others, we're going to measure in 1/2 of an inch and make a mark. And again on this side, 1/2 of an inch in and make a mark. Now we want to leave a nice opening here in the base to make it a whole lot easier for us to turn this bag through. So I would say, let's see, what is this? That's about 4 inches. I would go about 4 inches in. And this is for the weekender size bag. The overnighter will be a little bit smaller, so just adjust your measurements accordingly. But you want to leave a nice wide opening here in the center. So what we're going to do is we're only going to stitch between these lines and between these lines. So again, we're not stitching all the way to the end, and we're not stitching in the center. So we're going to take it, stitch, back stitching at the beginning, at the end, same back stitching at the beginning, at the end, and then leaving this whole middle section unsewn. All right, so that is stitched. Again, we have that little piece here, this whole piece here in the center, and then just like on the exterior, we have this giant piece, which is our lining. All right, so I'm just going to kind of fold this up. We can set this to the side we're going to grab our exterior panels and start to put our main zipper on and put this whole thing together. So let me put this to the side, and then we're going to grab our main exterior again. And our main zipper. So what I want to do here first is find the center of this panel. And again, you can make a snip or use a pen to make a little mark. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I don't think I did it on this side. Nope. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Again, finding the center here. Making that little snip. All right, and I'm going to do my best to keep all of this in the camera frame. It is large and bulky, and it can be a little tricky, but we should have no problem. All right, so as you can see, the zipper is longer than the panel, and that's what we want because the zipper is going to be hanging over the sides. All right, so what we want to do is separate our zipper teeth. We're going to put one piece, one half to the side for now, on the zipper teeth, zipper tape, I should say. We need to find the center, and I'm pinching it just to hold it for a second, and then I'm going to make a mark so it's easier to see. But I'm going to match that right up with that center notch I made in the panel. And the zipper tape is wrong side up, so it's facing down. Teeth side are down towards this panel. All right, and then clipping, like I said, clipping all the way across. Now when we sew this all together, this is going to be a two-step process because I find it easier to sew it starting at the center this way and then flip it over and sew at the center going out that way. Just because of what we have to do with the zipper, I find it a whole lot easier to do it as a two-step process versus trying to do it all at once. I just think it ends up laying nicer in the end, so you'll be much happier. Okay. So our zipper is right side down. Now what we need to do is grab our lining, our big lining piece, and figuring out if you view this as the front of the bag, what do you want on the front of the bag? Do you want the slip pocket to be on that side, or do you want the zipper pocket to be on that side? I think for me, I'm going to put the zipper pocket. I usually do the slip pocket, but I think for this one, the way you look into it and stuff, I think I want the zipper pocket this time on the outside. So flipping that over, and again, nope, I thought I marked the center. I probably just did a fold, but we want to find the center of our lining panel here. And then we're going to match it up with the center mark on the zipper. So since I used a pen, it was a whole lot easier to see. And then we're just going to clip that across as well. Okay, now that we have that clipped all the way across, what we're going to do is measure in 2 inches from the side, and I'm going to make a pin mark. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side because we'll be working from this side. I'm going to measure in 2 inches and make a pin mark. And that ends up being right next to my clip. That's totally fine. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take it over to the machine. Everything is clipped. We're going to start in the center, somewhere in the center, backstitching at the full seam allowance, and we're going to sew all the way down until we get to this mark. Once you get to this mark, you're going to leave your needle down. So let me move this over, pretend like that's my needle. We're going to take the zipper tape and pull it down so it's out of the way, and then we're going to finish sewing straight across to the edge. Okay, so again, starting in the center, come all the way until you get to that point, leave your needle down, take your zipper tape that's hanging off the side, pull it down, fold that back across, and then continue sewing to the end. Then you're going to take it, flip it over, and you're going to start wherever your stitches are right here on this side, and then you're going to do the same thing, sewing all the way down to this mark, leave your pen or leave your needle down, pull your zipper tape down towards the middle, and then continue sewing all the way across to the end. All right, there is what that looks like. We have our zipper teeth, zipper tape down in the center so it is not caught up in that center seam there. Same thing on this side. And now what we need to do is repeat the whole thing to attach the other end with the other half of the zipper tape. So again, taking our zipper tape, finding the center mark, and then I'm going to make a little pen mark there. And just like we did, it's the exact same process. Again, we're going to clip this in place. We're going to take the other half of our lining, clip that in place. We're going to measure in 2 inches from each side. And then we're going to sew across, stopping at that 2-inch mark so that we can move our zipper teeth, our zipper tape down and out of the way. And then continue sewing all the way across the top of that panel. All right, now that that is sewn, what we need to do now is sew up the sides. So, like I said, I'm going to do my best to keep this all within camera frame. But what we want to do now is we want to match up so it's exterior side, lining side to lining side. So we're going to start here in the center, and I'm going to push these zipper tabs down back towards the center so I don't want it to get caught in that side seam. So what I'm going to do here is just add a couple clips here in the center to hold it, because I don't want this center seam slipping around too much. All right, and then I'm going to clip all the way down the side panel. And again, trying to match up those side seams as much as possible. The side seams here at the bottom. And then, let's see, I need to adjust a little bit here on the side. So I will stretch this a bit so that it works. All right, and then I'm going to add just a stronger clip here at the bottom to help hold that, since I have the base and it's kind of firm, so I want to make sure it stays nice and secure. All right, and then clipping all the rest of the way down to the bottom of the lining. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to sew all the way down this long side. So I will take this starting at the exterior. So starting here, I will backstitch, sew all the way down according to the seam allowance. Once I get here, I will backstitch again a couple times just because that's where our tab is, our side D-ring tab. Come all the way to here and then increasing to the lining seam allowance. Once you get here, increasing to the lining seam allowance and then sewing all the way down to the bottom. So all the way down the side. Then we're going to clip the other side just in the same way, and then again sewing all the way down that side as well, sewing up both sides. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll be back and we can do the boxed corners next. All right, once you get the sides sewn up, this is what you should have. You will have a little bit of an overhang from your D-ring tabs here. It is up to you if you want to trim this off, depending on the type of webbing you use. Make sure that you either singe the ends or maybe double stitch again if you have a zigzag stitch, just to help hold it so it doesn't want to fray. I'm going to actually leave mine here. I added some fray check on the ends of my tabs, so hopefully they won't fray, and I should be good, but I'm going to leave mine. I'm not going to cut this extra off. And also, again, because I am using a pretty flexible type material, it shouldn't impede the inside too much. All right, so now what we need to do is we need to box these corners. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our side and matching up that side seam with the little mark that we made earlier. I'm going to use one of these stronger clips here to hold this right in place. And then I'm going to clip across. Again, I'm using these stronger clips here just because it's the vinyl and it's the base, and it can be a little tricky. Okay, and then what we're going to do on this one is, once we get this all turned over, come over to where our base is. If you wanted to snip into this side, not the base, you're snipping into the side panel just up to the stitch line that you made. That should help that corner pull over and make this side seam, sewing up this side seam, a little bit easier because it's not wanting to pull around the corner. So it should lay a little flatter for you to sew that up. Okay, so we're going to sew straight across here according to the seam allowance. I will add a second row of stitching just barely to the outside of that. That helps to give the seam a little bit of strength, and it also helps to prevent the stitches from wanting to pull through and be seen from the outside of the bag. So we're going to do it to that one. We're going to come around and do the same thing to this one. Again, here I'll show you before, on here I'll show you before I clip it, but if you snip just up to that seam line on your bottom piece, not the base, but on that bottom accent piece. Same here, just snip right up to that line, and then that should help this base to lay a little flatter. So I'm butterflying open that side seam just to try to keep some of that bulk down. And then lining it up all the way across. All right, and we're going to do the same thing on the lining panels. So once I get this clipped, we'll move back, or down I should say, to the lining. And we're going to do the same thing. So again, on this one, if you wanted to add that little snip to help that lay flat, you can. You could also just give it a fold, and that should work as well. All right, but as you can see, we're going to clip it across, and for this one, for the lining, since it's so thin, I'm just going to push the seam over to the side. Let me grab some more clips. All right, so then I'm going to clip it all the way across to the side. Same thing over here. Okay, and then we're going to sew across according to the seam allowance for the lining. And again, we're going to do the same thing on this final remaining base, corner, whatever you want to call it, side. pushing that seam allowance over. I'm going to clip across, and then once I get these clipped across, I'm going to take them to the sewing machine. I'm going to sew all of the corners. Again, the exterior at the seam allowance, the lining at the lining seam allowance, which is a little larger than the exterior. All right, so we'll do all of these box corners, get these sewn up, and then we'll be back and we'll be ready to turn it through, believe it or not. So, all right, let's go. All right, now that we have the corners boxed, we have this giant monstrosity that we need to try to work with. So what I'm going to recommend you do is just trim these corners a little bit on the base before we turn it through. And that will help it to hopefully lay a little nicer and flatter and give you a nice box corner once we turn it through. And then on the lining, I'm going to recommend just trimming back that lining. Just make it even in case it slipped while you were sewing it, or if you were a little bit uneven in cutting, just trim it back by about half. All right, there we go. All right, let me just toss these little scraps away. And now we are ready to turn the bag through. So using this big opening in the lining, we're going to reach in, reach all the way through, grab the exterior, and just pull it through. So you're probably going to have to work at this a little bit, but with this nice big opening here in the lining, hopefully it won't be too hard. Okay, it is mostly turned through. That wasn't too bad. What we want to do now is I'm going to add some clips all the way around, and I'm just rolling the seams to try to get them nice and flat, and also get this zipper pulled up to where it should be. We are going to top stitch this eventually. Oops. Once we get the linings closed and the zipper closed and all that. So this should help to hold everything in place and make our top stitching a little bit easier. So just go ahead and clip these in place all the way around. All right, once you get that clipped, you can kind of push your lining in to make sure everything looks good and it's fitting about how it should. We still have to close up things so it'll get pulled in a little bit more snug. But if your lining is way too baggy and you don't like how it's looking, then go ahead and pull it back out. You can increase the seam allowance on your lining and then push it back in, and then that should adjust your lining so that you don't have a saggy lining. This one is going to be just fine because by the time we get it all done and turned through, then it should lay just nicely, and it's supposed to be a little more floppy anyway. Okay, so to close up our openings, we're going to open our zipper pocket, reach inside. I'm going to pull the pocket out first because I think this will make it a little easier. All right, and then we're going to reach inside this hole and we're going to grab our lining. So We are, in essence, pulling our lining out through the pocket, through the zipper pocket. And what we want to do is we just want to pull it out enough so that we can clip this opening all the way across, and you can see where we're going to need to sew because we have that stitch line from before. Okay, once you have that clipped all the way across, we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're just going to sew straight across, continuing with that line for our seam allowance, and then we can stuff this back inside. Once we have that stuffed inside, we're going to turn this one under as well. This is the lining, the zipper pocket. We're going to turn that under and stitch straight across, but let me go ahead and do this first. I'll stuff it back inside and then I'll show you the zipper pocket. All right, so lining is closed. I'm going to stuff that back inside. Okay, and then now what we're left with is our zipper pocket. So we want to just fold this under. And I usually try and fold it down by about 1/2 inch. So whichever way you can do that, that is easiest for you. Usually I find that I have to do it, especially with this is waterproof canvas, so I have to work it as I go. It's a little stiffer, so you just kind of got to show who's boss. All right, so once you get this clipped all the way across, what we're going to do is sew this along this bottom edge. Oops, broken clip. All right, we're going to sew right along this bottom edge at about 1/8 to 1/16 of a seam allowance. Because this is waterproof canvas, I'll probably do about 1/8 inch. We just want to try and get as close as you can to that edge without or while still catching both sides of the pocket. All right, so we're going to go ahead and sew straight across this, and then we'll push this one inside. All right, once that is sewn across, now we just need to stuff this one back inside. Like I said, using waterproof canvas here, it's a little bit of a firmer, or I should say it's a bit of a firmer material. So it does take some working to get it to go all the way in. There we go, get those corners pushed out. All right, now I can close that zipper pocket. All right, and I've got some air between these panels, so I'll have to lay it flat and squish some of the air out, which will also help it to lay nicer. All right, so the last thing we have to do here is we need to now top stitch all the way around the outside edge of this bag. So right about 1/8 inch from this folded line, just top stitch all the way around. When you get to the corners, just make sure your zipper tape is up and out of the way and stitch all the way around. Starting in the corner, I would start right at the side seam because this is going to be hidden by the O-ring connector. So your side seams is a perfect spot to hide where you start and stop your stitching. So I will go ahead and do that starting here, go all the way around, and I'll meet you back here. All right, now that that is top stitched all the way around, what we need to do now is attach our zipper pulls. So I'm going to try to squish this down to make it a little easier. See if I can do this without my zipper jig. We're going to attach one zipper pull from either side. There we go. So I'm just going to pull that to the center, come around to the other side and attach the other zipper pull. All right, so there is our zipper pulls attached. Now what we need to do is attach the zipper tab ends here at the end of the zippers. So what I will do is I will put a piece of double-sided tape down the length of each zipper tab end. Okay, and then removing the paper backing, I will just eyeball this and folding the tab in half over the zipper end, I should say. I'm just going to clip that in place to help hold it. So that's what that looks like. We are going to sew a box around the outside of the zipper tab. Optionally, you could also sew an X in the middle. That's totally up to you, but we just want to sew a box around the edge of this to secure it in place. Now, another option you have if you don't want to add a zipper tab like this is that you could use zipper end hardware. And again, that's just another option for you if you would prefer to use that instead. All right, so we have our zipper tabs. Here we go, if I can bring it to the center. We have our zipper tabs attached to our zipper ends. So let's go ahead and sew a box around each of these to secure these in place. And then the last thing we have to do is attach the O-rings, and then we'll be done. All right, zipper end tabs are attached. So now let's go ahead and open the zippers all the way up. The last thing we need to do here is work on the O-rings, the O-ring tabs, which will go right here over that center. So that's why we need this zipper opened all the way so we can easily access that middle seam. Okay, so taking your, let me push this out of the way a little bit if I can. All right, taking your 4 O-ring tabs, we're going to flip them over and then just add a piece of double-sided tape. Again, this is optional. I just like that it helps to hold the pieces together while I'm sewing. So we're going to make 2 sets here. So placing one right on top of the other. And don't worry if it's not perfect because we are going to trim it after we sew it. But you just want to place the O-ring tabs wrong sides together. So you have your exteriors facing out. Okay, once you have that, we're going to take it over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew all the way around the perimeter, starting, I would start at one short end and then just sew a box all the way around the outside of each. All right, once you get those stitched, I will come back at the very end and I will use my little ruler and just trim. I'll come to 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the stitch line and I'll just trim all the way around, and that just helps me to have a nice even edge. Everything matches and looks good. And do the same thing for the other one. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to mark our hole placements for where we are going to put these rivets in to attach them to the sides of our bag. So there are measurements in the pattern. So the first one is 1/4 inch in and 1/4 inch up. And the second one is 1/4 inch in from the long side, and then we're going to come 5/8 of an inch up from that original one. So again, 1/4 inch in and 1/4 inch up, and then 5/8 from that first one. So that's what you should have. Your dots will be close to the edges here, and that's because what we're doing here is we will be going over that center seam. So I just want to make sure that it's far enough that it's going to hold the tab securely, but also not get hung up in that center seam. Okay, so now let me grab my hole puncher, as well as some rivets, and I'll show you how we're going to finish this off. Okay, so using my hole puncher, right where I've marked a dot, actually, you could do this two ways. You could fold it in half and punch through both sides at the same time, or you could punch through the first one, the one side where you have the dots marked, and then use that as the template to mark the holes for the other side of the O-ring tab. So here I just did them both at the same time. The other option is, like I said, you could just punch those two and then fold that in half, use your pen to go through and mark where the hole placement should be, and then punch those. I find that it's easy enough and quick enough for me to do it all at the same time, so I'm not too worried about that. All right, punching those holes, or making sure all those little bits are out of my holes. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use this now as a template to come over here to our side seam. So this D-ring tab or this O-ring tab is going to be folded in half over that middle seam. And so you want your seam allowance to be right in the middle of the tab. And then you want your tab to be sticking up from the side of the bag by about 1/2 inch. Okay, so once you get that right where you want it, you're going to use your O-ring tab as a template to mark the 4 hole placements. Okay, then we're going to take this, and if you have a handheld, actually let me grab my handheld. I think it'll be a little easier to do it on this, so I don't have to try to finagle that whole bag underneath the table press. And since I'm not using super thick material here, it should be just fine. So I'm just punching those holes where those pen marks are. Okay, now to attach our D-ring, our O-ring, I keep calling it a D-ring, we're going to take a rivet, and I'll start at the top hole. It doesn't matter which side, but I just start at the top hole. I find it a little easier to do all of them if I start at the top. So push that through. Again, make sure all those little bits are out of the way. Folding it over in half, and then cap it off. Just like that. So we're going to do that for all 4 holes, going through all the layers. All right, so now that I have all 4 of those, that's what your side O-ring tab should look like. I will go ahead and set those. I will do the same thing to this side, marking those holes, again, using that as a template, setting those rivets. I will go ahead and do all of that, and then I'll be back to show you the very final step. All right, so that is how our O-ring tabs look on the side. Now what we want to do is just take one of our carabiners, our carabiner O-rings, and open it up, there we go, and just slide it on like that to each end All right, so opening it up, sliding it on. There we go. All right, so now we can zip this up. Get my zipper pulls out here. All right, now you have a couple options to use this bag. And now that I've squished all the air out, it needs to have some more air return so it looks good. Okay, so you could use it as a big tote, just like this. Leave it just like this and use it as a tote. Or if you want it to be more of a duffel style, so what I will do is kind of flatten out this side seam and then bring this O-ring down and clip it into that side D-ring tab. Okay, same thing on this side. We flatten it out, bring it down, and clip it to that side tab. All right, now let's see if I can get this in shape since I don't have any stuffing inside the bag and I squished all the air out. All right, so that gives you a little bit more of a boxy, I don't know how this is looking here on the side. It's a little bit more of a boxy duffel style bag. And I think this style is also super cute. Like I said, it needs a little air inside to help it and a little bit of stuffing to help it keep its shape. For now, since we just stitched it, it doesn't really know quite yet where it's supposed to live. So once it gets used to where the folds are supposed to be and stuff, it'll easily go there. The other option you have, if you have the crossbody, you could clip it to here and to here. And then this can be, it would be narrow, but this would be your crossbody bag. Optionally, if you don't have that and you just have your D-ring, you could clip all sorts of things on here. You could clip little charms on here. You could clip hand sanitizer, stuff like that. The other option for a crossbody is if you unhook your O-rings on both sides and then you attach, you could feed your zipper tabs through the O-rings like this, and then hook your crossbody. Let's see, I don't know if let's see if you can see that. So the O-ring, the tab is through the O-ring, and then you would hook your crossbody strap onto here, and so then that creates another shape. So kind of like now the bag is angled up like this, and that creates also a neat shape. So I will do a video outside of this showing a wider angle. Probably the intro, you probably will have seen it by now already. The intro to this showing the different styles, and I'm also planning on doing a separate intro video to this pattern in general. Like this, like I said, this is the weekender size, which is the larger one. There is also an overnighter size, which is great for if you're just doing a small trip or just going away for 1 or 2 nights. All right, guys, this is the Nomad Traveler. Again, this is the weekender size. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. I hope you enjoyed the pattern. Thank you so much for joining me today while we make this. Thank you so much for supporting me and my patterns. I truly appreciate you, and I appreciate the fact that your support allows me to continue to do what I love. So again, thank you. All right, and I hope you have a great day, and I hope you get to go sew something fun, like maybe a nomad. All right, guys, have a great day.